How's it going, everyone? Paul with Adaptable Survival. What I wanted to do in today's episode is dive back into my Ultralight Survival Series. If you've been following me for a while, last year, about October, November, I put up an ultralight video with a winter setup that I planned to dive into last winter. Unfortunately, for some personal reasons, I was never able to get that project going. Now that this year's teaching cycle is starting to kind of slow down a little bit, I can focus a lot more on my own projects and what I want to do with Adaptable Survival. I wanted to dive back into that series now that I have it kind of fleshed out a little bit more and talk about the pack that I have on my back and some of the different categories of gear that I'm going to be looking at and how I can cross over ultralight with survival gear. Stick with me as we dive into it. So what I wanted to do firstly, before we dive into the pack and kind of look at what categories I'm going to be focusing on, I kind of wanted to explain my thought process with this series, kind of my own belief system that plays into how I have this packed out. So with ultralight backpacking, if you search it up online, you're going to find 1,000,001 definitions of it. But generally, what people are trying to achieve is lower their base weight to anywhere from sub 10 pounds to sub 15 pounds. Some people sub 20. So looking at that, my goal with this series isn't to get as light as possible, although I may explore that idea down the road, because this is going to be kind of an ever going series that I'll touch on every once in a while and kind of build off of. But when I look at survival, or people that come to a survival training class, you see a wide range of gear being used. Some people are using military surplus, which is generally pretty heavy, but it's also extremely durable. I have seen people come with some ultralight gear. The downside with ultralight gear is it's not always as durable, but it's extremely light. You save a ton of weight, but there's some trade-offs there. So what my whole goal with this series is to see if I can't find the balance between ultralight backpacking and survival gear that is going to be durable, long-lasting, and going to save me if I do happen to get into a pinch out in the backcountry. So with the pack I have here, this is a pack from Packback Designs, partnered with the Pathfinder School Self-Reliance Outfitters. I believe this is the TP40, if I remember correctly. As always, I will throw the links down to my Self-Reliance Outfitters page down below. If you want to check things out, great. By no means feel obligated to buy anything. But what I liked about this pack and why I had to get my hands on one is weight-wise, this thing weighs 18 ounces. The trade-off with that is, though, it's not going to have a very large load carrying capacity. If I remember correctly, this is around the ballpark of about 25 pounds, 20 to 25 pounds, maybe 30 pounds at the very most. Now, you could definitely carry a lot heavier, but usually the trade-off with an ultralight pack, once you start getting higher and higher in weight, is you start losing some comfort. So with that being said, let's dive into the pack, kind of look at some of the categories. I'm not going to dive heavily into specs on any of the gear in this video. It's just to start this series, talk about a few of the categories, and these categories are going to be built on throughout this series, the way that I approach my gear, how the ways I think with things. So you'll be able to get kind of an idea of how I approach it and maybe get some ideas for yourself. So before we dive too heavily into the pack, something else I wanted to highlight. As of how I have this loaded out right now, I'm sitting right at 20 pounds. That's with spare batteries, food, water, things that wouldn't always necessarily be calculated into the base weight. I just wanted to see what the total weight of this current system that I've been running for the most of summer. A few things in here I wouldn't always carry, but some of these things I'll definitely have in here majority of the time. So the first area we're going to take a look at is this front pocket here. Now, I do believe shot cord comes across the front here. I've removed that because on some of the ultralight packs I've seen, that essentially eliminates the usefulness of this front pocket for myself. So I usually just get rid of that because I don't use it. What I could always do with these tabs is add shot cord so I can attach trekking poles, which I may do down the road. But first and foremost, I have my trauma kit or my bleed out kit. This is always in my pack regardless of what I'm doing. Day hikes, multi-day trips, teaching classes, I always have this with me. I'm not going to dive into this because I have done a video on that. Next up in this Magpul DACA pouch, I have all of my navigation, map, signal panel, pace beads, compass, pencil, notebook. I have that all stored in here. Exact weight on this, I'm not too sure, but this is just the pouch and system that I've always carried, regardless if I'm going ultralight or heavier. And the only other thing I have in the front here is a rain jacket. Personally, I don't carry rain pants. Typically, I'm wearing pants the majority of the year, and they're either quick drying or have some sort of DWR treatment to them. Along on the outside, in this side water bottle pocket, I have the Pathfinder titanium cup and bottle with a Human Gear cap on top. The other side, I have my Grail Ultra Press. And then my ultralight cutting tools are a Silky F180 and a BPS Savage. I will be doing a video on the BPS Savage, so watch for that on the channel. And that's what's going to be housed on these outer pockets here. There is another pocket up top here. I always generally like to have some sort of brain on my pack, so I do like this feature. And what I just have in here is my possibles pouch. I've done a video on that, so I'm not diving into that in this video. So let's dive into the inside of the pack here. On the bottom side of the brain, which I forgot to talk about, there is a mesh pocket here, and I just have a few snacks in there right now. This pack has a roll top. This pouch is just my extra batteries to charge my phone since I film and take all of my pictures with my phone. Also houses my mics. So my mics I may or may not bring on trips depending on what I'm doing. In this Faru ultralight pullout, I just have about a day or two's worth of food in here. This pot here is just a Lixada pot that I got off Amazon. It is an ultralight cooking system that I've been messing around with. So I have a BRS stove, gas canister, and a lighter housed in there. I'll dive deeper into this cook system in a later video. And this Kafaru pull-out here, this usually just houses my black diamond zip lantern and my Flex Tail Gear mini X pump, tiny X pump, one of the two. I've done a video on that. So now with this current system, I've been using an ultralight hammock system as my shelter. I actually picked up this Kajaro hammock from a Walmart for, I think it was on clearance for like $28. So for me, I mean, that's a killer deal. This is plenty big enough for me. I have played around with a sleeping pad in here, which we'll dive into here in a second. But I've really liked picking up this. Then my hammock straps, I have the Eno Helios straps. These weigh like 3, maybe 4 ounces. With my hammock, I'm, just over half a pound. Now, I have the Sleep and Go sleeping pad in here. I picked this up off Amazon. These things are like 40 bucks. Reason I went with this is, one, the price point, but two, it comes in at 14 ounces. R value, you're probably sitting around 3-ish ballpark. But I've liked it. I've tried this with my hammock. Doesn't work the greatest, just because this material likes to move around. So I may play around with adding some silicone or some seam seal to the bottom of the sleeping pad so it doesn't move around on me. The tarp I've been using for this system is the REI Quarter Dome SL tarp. With the stakes and everything, I think it's right around a pound or so. But the tarp is really, really light. It's a 10 by 10, so it gives me plenty of room. I can make multiple configurations with it. So it gives me a lot of options with that tarp. Then I have my Cocoon Hyperlight Air Core pillow. In my opinion, a pillow is a must. I know some people like to use their extra clothing, put it in a dry bag, anything like that. And if that's what you like to do, more power to you. For me, I just need a pillow. The last thing I have in here, the last two things. So this is a Get Out Gear double puffy blanket. They sent me this a few months ago to try out, and I really liked it. All it is a blanket. There are some snaps on it, so I've been using it as a top quilt and on of a few different configurations with this system. The last thing I have in here is a Swagman roll. Now I chose the Swagman roll because it gives me a lot of different functions with one piece of gear. I can use it as a sleeping bag, I can use it as a top quilt, I can use it as an under quilt, I can use it as kind of a poncho liner or a blanket. So what I've been playing around with is using this as an under quilt and the Get Out Gear double puffy blanket as my top quilt. The Swagman for me hasn't worked phenomenally as an under quilt, but it will work. So what I wanted to do with this video is not so much dive into each and every piece of gear that I'm carrying, dive into the specs, the whole gambit. I wanted to start the series off by showing you what I've been carrying the last couple of months that fall in line with ultralight, but also survival gear that personally I believe I will always want to have. Now there's a few other things that I would carry that I'm not necessarily going to show on camera, but I will be talking about those topics down the road. With that being said, I said the base weight of this, or the total weight of this right now, with a day's worth of food that can easily be stretched out for 2 days, maybe even longer if I really needed to, is 20 pounds exactly. That is with extra batteries, mics, everything that I use for filming, and the extra batteries for obviously my phone so that I can recharge it as I'm taking pictures, all that. Now, this isn't to say this is what you should be carrying or this is what I'd be carrying on a through hike, because obviously with my hammock system, I'm not going to carry something to use as an underquilt and a sleeping pad. I would choose one or the other. If I were going to just choose one, I would probably just bring the Swagman and leave the sleeping pad at home. Just because the sleeping pad hasn't worked quite right or quite exactly how I would like it to with the hammock system. So I could lay the Swagman down, lay on top of that, and use the puffy blanket as my top quilt or vice versa. I just wanted to show you the versatility that I have with this kit as it stands today. Moving forward, I'm going to try out different things, different top quilts, under quilts, shelter systems, the whole wide range of it. And I'm going to take you all along with that journey. Not to say that you have to buy any of this stuff or use any of this stuff. This is an exercise in understanding gear, what its capabilities are, what it can do for you, and blending that with my background as a wilderness survival instructor. So I look forward to starting the series with y'all, taking you along with this journey. Culmination of kind of where this is leading is eventually I want to head out west and backpack hunt. And if any of you are familiar with that, and if you're not, you have to pack in all the gear you're going to need for however many days you're going to be out there, but you also have to be able to pack out an animal once you do harvest it. So for something like that, this pack is obviously not going to do the trick for it, but that's something I will touch on in another video down the road for another series. So I hope you enjoyed this video today, kind of got the ideas rolling. Let me know down below what kind of ultralight gear you've used, what systems have worked really well for you, which ones haven't. I always look forward to your comments and the engagement we get going in the comment section down below, as well as on my Instagram and Facebook pages. I try to stay on top of those as best I can, but when a lot of them come through, it's hard to keep up with those. But I do greatly appreciate all that support, all that interaction. As well as I'll throw my Amazon link and my self-reliance offers and all the other links down below. Check out the stuff if you want to, but by no means go through my links and buy anything. It's totally up to you. As always, this has been Paul with Adaptable Survival. Adapt your mind, your body, and your gear.